I never thought this would happen to me. David and I were supposed to be different. We had the perfect life, or so I thought. We met years ago in college, and from the start, I knew David was the one. He was everything I wanted, charming, successful, always making me laugh. We had the house, the kids, the dream. Or so I believed. But everything changed in a moment, when I saw his phone on the kitchen counter one evening. I hadn't meant to snoop, but I picked it up, just to check the time. That's when I saw it. Lily. The name wasn't familiar, but it was the messages that struck me. I felt my heart skip a beat as I read through the texts. I miss you. I can't wait to see you again. You're all I think about when I'm not with you. The words were too familiar. They were intimate. Too intimate for someone who was supposed to be my husband. And then it hit me, David had been hiding something from me. For months, maybe even longer. My stomach churned. How could I have missed it? How could I not have seen the signs? The late nights, the business trips that lasted longer than they should, the distance growing between us. I felt sick. But at the same time, I wasn't surprised. Deep down, I had always known. I had just refused to face it. Mia's words echoed in my mind, you didn't keep him interested. You should have known. And maybe she was right. Maybe I hadn't done enough. I hadn't kept him engaged, hadn't noticed the small cracks before they turned into an earthquake. I spent hours staring at the phone, rereading the messages, trying to make sense of everything. But the more I read, the more I understood, it wasn't just a one-time mistake. David had been seeing her for a long time. This wasn't something I could just brush off. When David came home that night, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was still too numb. But I knew that everything had changed. I couldn't look at him the same way again. I couldn't pretend anymore. The next morning, I called Mia. I had to tell someone. But when she picked up, I realized that I wasn't ready to talk to her either. I wasn't ready to face her cold, detached response. She had always been blunt, always told me the truth without sugarcoating it, but this time, I wasn't sure I could handle it. Instead, I waited. I told myself I would confront David when the time was right. But the truth was, I already knew what would happen. He would deny it. He would say it was nothing, that I was overreacting. But I wasn't overreacting. I was sure. When I did finally confront him, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even upset. I was just tired. I was tired of pretending. Tired of believing in something that wasn't real. David looked at me with confusion in his eyes when I told him I knew about Lily. His face didn't show guilt. It didn't show remorse. It showed a kind of resignation. I never meant for you to find out this way, he said, his voice low. I could barely speak. You've been seeing her for months, I said, my voice steady but cold. How could you do this? He didn't have an answer. His silence was all I needed. I thought we had something, I continued. I thought you loved me. David's eyes flickered, but there was no real emotion in them. I do love you, he said, but it didn't sound real. It didn't sound like he meant it. I needed something else. I didn't know what to say. All the words I had been preparing to scream at him felt hollow. He wasn't the man I thought I married. He was just another liar. Another person I had trusted who had betrayed me. I can't do this, I said. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. I'm not the problem here, David. You are. The days after the confrontation passed in a blur. I had never felt so lost. David was gone, and I was left alone with the reality of what had happened. The life I thought we had built felt like a house of cards, collapsing under the weight of a single, devastating truth. He had been seeing Lily for months, maybe longer. And I had never seen it coming. The messages had been there, staring at me, but I hadn't been willing to see them. The late nights, the excuses, the emotional distance, all those little cracks that I had dismissed as life stresses, now stood as glaring signs I had failed to recognize. I didn't know how to move forward, so I stayed busy. I cared for the kids, went through the motions of everyday life, but inside, I was empty. Every part of me was consumed by the betrayal. I kept thinking about what Mia had said, that I had failed to keep David interested. It gnawed at me, her words echoing in my mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe I hadn't kept him engaged enough, hadn't been exciting enough. Was it really my fault? I couldn't keep pretending, though. I needed answers, not excuses. I had to know everything. I had to confront him, ask him the questions that had been tormenting me since I found his phone. The house was quiet that evening. The kids were at their grandmother's, and David was still absent. My hands were shaking as I walked into his study. I didn't care if it was wrong anymore. I needed to know. I opened his laptop. The password was easy to guess. I opened his email. My heart dropped when I saw Lily's name. I had seen the text messages, but this was different. These were emails. Photos of David and Lily together. Trips they'd taken, ones he'd promised to take with me but never did. I saw them laughing together, sharing moments I had longed for in our marriage. It was as if our life had been nothing but a facade. Then there were the words. The ones I could never take back. She's perfect, but I need more. The words stung, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. I had given him everything. I had trusted him with my heart, with my life. And he had betrayed me in the most cruel way imaginable. I didn't know what to do. The betrayal was suffocating. But I couldn't keep hiding from it. I had to face him. I had to ask him. When he came home, I didn't hesitate. I wasn't angry at first, just calm. I felt numb, as though the pain had already consumed me. I found the emails, I said quietly. I found everything. David stopped in his tracks, looking like a deer caught in headlights. His face was pale, but there was no apology, no remorse. I didn't want you to find out like this, he said. His voice was soft, but it lacked any real emotion. I didn't want to hurt you. I stood up, feeling the weight of his words press against me. But all I could think about was how he didn't care enough to tell me the truth. How he had kept it hidden, letting me live in a lie. Well, I found out, I said, my voice steady, even though I was fighting the tears. And now I need to hear it from you. What did you do, David? How long has this been going on? He looked at me for a long moment, and for a brief second, I thought I saw guilt flicker across his face. But it disappeared quickly, replaced by a dull, resigned expression. I've been seeing her for a long time, he admitted. I thought it was just a phase. I thought I could fix things between us, but I couldn't. I wasn't happy. I shook my head. That's it? You weren't happy? I didn't want to hurt you, he repeated. But I just needed something more. I felt the anger building inside me, but it wasn't enough to make me shout. It was something deeper, something colder. This wasn't the man I had married. This wasn't the person I had trusted with everything. He was a stranger to me now, someone I didn't know. You needed something more? I repeated. What about me, David? What about us? What about the life we built? I couldn't talk to you about it, he said quietly. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to fix myself. That was the moment it all became clear. He wasn't sorry. He was just scared. Scared of the life we had, scared of the family we had built, scared of the responsibility he had taken on. He was running, not from me, but from the life we had both created together. I'm not the one who's broken, I said, my voice trembling now. You are. He didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I turned away from him, walking toward the door. I want you to leave, I said, barely able to speak the words. Pack your things. Go. I can't do this anymore. He opened his mouth as though he was about to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. Just go. And he did. The days after David left felt like a blur. I tried to focus on the kids, on keeping the house together, but every time I looked at the empty space beside me, I felt like I was suffocating. The house, once filled with laughter and love, now echoed with silence. I hadn't spoken to David since I told him to leave. Part of me thought I'd feel relief, but instead, all I felt was the weight of his absence. He had packed his things quietly, not fighting me, not begging for another chance. That only made it worse. But despite the overwhelming sadness, I knew I needed closure. I couldn't let him slip away without facing the truth, my truth. I sent David a message that evening, asking him to meet. I needed to hear him admit everything. I needed to confront him face to face. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I knew it couldn't stay like this. He agreed, and when he arrived, it was like we were strangers, standing in the same room but with an entire ocean between us. He didn't look the same. He looked tired, worn down, and his face held a kind of emptiness I hadn't seen before. It was as if he had given up on everything. We sat across from each other, the space between us heavy and thick with the words we both knew had to be said. But neither of us spoke immediately. We just stared, trying to figure out what to say. Finally, I broke the silence. Why didn't you just tell me, David? I asked, my voice shaking with restrained emotion. Why didn't you just tell me the truth? David shifted in his seat, his eyes flickering away from mine. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for what he'd done. I didn't want to hurt you, he said softly. I didn't want to lose you. But his words fell flat. They felt empty. They felt rehearsed. Really? I asked, my voice rising. You didn't want to hurt me, and yet you kept lying to me? You kept sleeping with someone else, and you didn't think I deserved to know? He opened his mouth to say something, but I didn't let him. You say you didn't want to hurt me, but you did, I continued. Every day that you kept this from me, every time you lied, you hurt me. You hurt us. You didn't care enough to fight for me. You didn't care enough to fix what was broken. Instead, you took the easy way out. You went to her. I wasn't happy, Sophia, he said, his voice barely audible. I don't know what happened. I couldn't pretend anymore. I was miserable, and I thought I could fix it by finding something else. Someone else. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You thought you could fix it by cheating on me? By betraying me? You really thought that was going to make things better? David's silence was the answer. He didn't have a response. He knew he was wrong. But that didn't change what had happened. I gave you everything, I said, my voice quieter now. I gave you my trust. I gave you my love. And you threw it all away. I'm sorry, he whispered, but it sounded like a plea, not an apology. He wasn't sorry. He was just sorry he'd been caught. You don't get to apologize, David, I said, standing up. Not anymore. You don't get to pretend that everything is okay. You've destroyed everything, and you think a simple sorry will fix it? You think that's enough? David looked at me then, his face crumbling with emotion. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted to lose you. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could fix me. I shook my head, the anger swelling in my chest. You couldn't fix it. And you couldn't fix me. You didn't care enough to try. You didn't care about this family, about our kids. You didn't care about what we had. If you had, you would have told me. You would have been honest. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. But now it's too late. I can't do this anymore. I can't go back to pretending that everything is fine. I can't keep trying to fix something that's already broken. You're not the man I married. You're not the man I trusted. David didn't say anything. He just sat there, his hands gripping the edge of the chair like he was trying to hold onto something, anything. But I couldn't give him that. Not anymore. I had already given him everything, and he had thrown it all away. I want you to leave, I said, my voice steady. I don't want to see you anymore. I can't live like this. I need you to go. David didn't fight it. He didn't argue or beg. He just stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back to me. I'm sorry, Sophia. I always loved you. I just didn't know how to fix it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The door closed behind him, and I was left standing there, my heart broken into pieces, but my resolve stronger than ever. The weeks after David left felt like a constant ache I couldn't escape. The silence in the house was deafening. Every time I looked at the empty chair at the dinner table, I felt a stab of pain. It was like I was living in a dream, a nightmare where everything was wrong, but nothing had changed. The kids didn't understand why Daddy wasn't home anymore, and I couldn't bring myself to explain it to them. I couldn't look at their innocent faces without feeling the weight of guilt. I hadn't protected them from this. I hadn't protected us. I tried to stay busy, work, errands, taking care of the kids, but nothing felt real anymore. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a prison. Every corner held memories I didn't want to revisit. The kitchen, where David and I had spent hours cooking dinner together, felt empty without him. The living room, where we watched movies as a family, now stood still and lifeless. I could almost hear his laughter, but it was just a ghost, a memory that cut deeper with every passing day. It wasn't just the house that was empty. It was me. I was hollow, lost in the wreckage of everything I had believed in. I had always prided myself on being strong, on being able to handle whatever life threw at me. But this was different. This wasn't something I could fix. I didn't reach out to anyone at first. I didn't want to. I didn't want to talk to anyone who might remind me of what I had lost. Not even Mia. But then, one afternoon, I got a message from her. Mia. I had been avoiding her for weeks. After her cold, indifferent response to David's betrayal, I couldn't bear to speak to her. But now, she was reaching out again. We need to talk. You can't shut me out. I'm your friend, Sophia. You need to hear me out. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to hear anything she had to say. But I knew I couldn't keep avoiding it. So, I replied. I'm not ready to talk to you yet. Her response came almost immediately. You're pushing everyone away. I know you're hurt, but I'm still here. I stared at the screen, fighting the urge to throw my phone across the room. Mia's words, always so cold, so matter-of-fact, cut deeper than they ever had before. She wasn't wrong. I was pushing everyone away. But I didn't care. I didn't want to hear her tell me again that I wasn't enough. But despite my reluctance, I agreed to meet. I needed to face her, if only to end the silence between us. So, I asked her to come over. When she arrived, I could see the same detached expression on her face. She walked in, her gaze scanning the room with that all-knowing look that made me feel like she was analyzing every corner of my broken life. I'm sorry for everything you're going through, Mia said, sitting down on the couch. She didn't sound sorry. It was more like a statement of fact, something she thought she should say. I didn't respond at first. I wasn't sure what to say. The last time we spoke, I had been so angry with her. But now, I was just exhausted. exhausted from the betrayal, from the pain, and from her complete lack of empathy. "You don't have to say that," I finally muttered. "You don't have to pretend like you care. You've already made your opinions clear." Mia looked at me, a flicker of something crossing her face, regret, maybe. But it was gone so quickly, I couldn't be sure. "You're right," she said quietly. "I wasn't here when you needed me most. But I can't change what's happened. I just want you to understand that I never meant to hurt you." "You didn't hurt me, Mia," I said, the words cold as they left my mouth. "David did." Mia didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her face still unreadable. "And you," I continued, my voice shaking with emotion, "you just stood by and watched. You didn't care enough to stop it. You didn't care enough to tell me the truth." "I did what I thought was best," Mia said, her voice flat. "I didn't want to get involved. You wouldn't have listened anyway." "I didn't need you to get involved," I snapped, standing up. "I needed a friend. I needed someone who would stand by me, not tell me it was my fault." Mia didn't move, didn't flinch. She just sat there, like she was waiting for me to finish. And when I was done, she spoke again. "I'm not going to apologize for being honest with you, Sophia," she said, her voice cold and steady. "You didn't keep David interested. You didn't do enough. And now you're facing the consequences." I felt the anger rise in me again, hot and bitter. "I don't need your advice, Mia. I don't need you to tell me what I did wrong. I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who betrayed you. He did." Mia stood up, her expression hardening. "I'm not telling you it's your fault, but you have to face the reality. You couldn't keep him. And now you have to live with the aftermath." I couldn't take it anymore. The coldness, the judgment, the way Mia made everything sound like it was so simple, so easy to understand. I had tried. I had given everything to my marriage, to David. But to Mia, it wasn't enough. I shook my head. "I don't need this from you, Mia. Not now." Without another word, I turned and walked to the door. Mia didn't stop me. She didn't try to say anything else. She just stood there, watching me, her face unchanged. I closed the door behind me, and the silence that followed was deafening. But this time, it wasn't just the silence of the house. It was the silence between me and Mia, between me and the people I thought I could trust. It's been a few weeks since I last saw David. He didn't fight me when I asked him to leave. He didn't beg for forgiveness. There was no grand gesture. He simply packed up his things and walked out, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I used to think I would feel relief when he was gone. That the weight would lift off my chest, that I could breathe again. But it didn't happen. The silence in the house was suffocating. The empty space beside me, where he used to sleep, was more unbearable than I'd imagined. I was trying to hold it all together. The kids didn't know what was happening. They were still too young to understand that Daddy wouldn't be coming home. I didn't want to explain it to them. I didn't want them to know that their father had lied, that he had betrayed us all. But everything felt hollow. The house, once filled with noise and life, now felt cold and still. Even the smallest tasks, doing the laundry, making dinner, seemed impossible. Every movement, every chore, felt like it was happening in slow motion. And then there was Mia. She hadn't contacted me since our last conversation, and for that, I was grateful. But part of me knew I couldn't avoid her forever. She had reached out again, and I knew I would have to face her eventually. It was a Saturday afternoon when I saw her message. "I'm coming over. I think we need to talk." I hesitated before I replied. I wasn't ready to see her, not after everything that had happened. But I couldn't keep running from it either. So, I agreed. When she arrived, I didn't invite her in right away. I stood at the door, arms crossed, my eyes scanning her face. She looked just as cold as she always did, but there was something different about her today, something more guarded, like she was holding back. "I'm sorry about what you're going through, Sophia," Mia said, her voice flat. "I can't imagine how hard this is for you." I didn't respond immediately. I didn't want to hear her empty words. I wasn't ready to hear her apologize, again, for something she had no part in fixing. "Just get to the point," I said, my voice sharp. "You wanted to talk. So talk." Mia looked at me, her expression unreadable. She didn't flinch, didn't react to my tone. She just sighed, as if she were weighing her words. "I know you're angry with me," Mia said quietly. "I know you think I didn't help. But I told you the truth, Sophia. I didn't want to make things worse for you." I felt the anger bubbling up again. "You didn't make things worse for me, Mia. You just didn't care. You just stood by and let me fall apart. I didn't need the truth. I needed a friend." Mia didn't say anything for a long time. She just stood there, watching me. Her eyes were hard, but there was something different in them now, something that resembled guilt, maybe even regret. But it was too late for that. "You were right about one thing," I said, my voice tight with emotion. "You've always been right about one thing. I didn't keep him interested. And now he's gone. And I can't fix it." Mia didn't respond. Instead, she stepped forward, slowly, and for a moment, I thought she was going to apologize. But she didn't. "I never meant to hurt you, Sophia," she said softly. "But I can't make it right. I can't fix what's broken." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. I didn't need her to fix it. I didn't need anyone to fix it. I had to do it myself. "I don't need you to fix it," I said, finally turning away from her. "I need to fix myself." Mia didn't argue. She just stood there, silently, as I walked toward the door. I was done. Done with the betrayal. Done with the empty apologies. I couldn't carry the weight of other people's mistakes anymore. "I need to move on," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I can't do that with you in my life anymore." Mia didn't try to stop me. She didn't try to convince me that things would get better. She just nodded and left, leaving me standing there, feeling both relieved and empty at the same time. The next few weeks were still hard. There were moments when I thought about David, about what could have been, what should have been. I missed the man I thought I married. But I didn't miss the man he had become. It took time, so much time, to start rebuilding. To remember who I was before him. Before all the lies. I wasn't just a wife, a mother, a caretaker. I was me. And it took the darkest moments of my life to finally see that. But as the weeks turned into months, I started to heal. Slowly. It wasn't easy, but I was learning to live without the weight of David's betrayal holding me down. I still had my kids. I still had my family. And even though I was scared, even though the future seemed uncertain, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let this define me. I didn't need Mia. I didn't need David. I just needed myself. It's been months since David left, and in that time, I've had to learn how to stand on my own. The first few weeks were the hardest. I didn't know how to fill the void he left behind. I had spent so much of my life making a home for us, taking care of everyone's needs, especially his, that I had forgotten who I was without him. Without the perfect image of the life I thought we had. But as time passed, the hurt started to fade. I focused on my kids, on finding small moments of joy, on breathing again. There were days when it felt like I was drowning in the weight of my own emotions, but there were other days, rare and fleeting, when I felt like I could finally breathe. I could live again. I didn't have to stay in the shadows of what had been. I was capable of moving on. I had started therapy. Talking to someone who wasn't emotionally invested in my story helped me see things clearer. It helped me realize that this wasn't my fault. David's betrayal was his choice. And Mia's indifference? That was something I couldn't change. I had to let it go, even though it hurt. Even though I thought she was supposed to be the one person who truly understood me. But I didn't need to hold on to that pain anymore. For the first time in a long time, I began to feel hope again. I started doing things that brought me peace, writing, walking in the park, spending time with friends who weren't afraid to tell me the truth, who didn't judge me for the choices I had made. I slowly started to build a life where I wasn't defined by what had happened. One day, I found myself walking past a cafe where David and I used to go every weekend. I paused, remembering how we would sit by the window, sipping our coffees and chatting about nothing. The memory wasn't as painful as it used to be. It wasn't full of resentment or regret. It was just a memory. A part of the past. I walked in and ordered a coffee, sitting by the same window where we had spent so many afternoons. The soft hum of the cafe around me felt comforting. The world was still moving, even when it felt like mine had stopped. And for the first time in months, I smiled. I smiled because I realized I had survived. I had made it through the worst part, and now, I was finally learning to live again. On my terms. Later that week, I bumped into Mia. It had been so long since we'd spoken. She looked almost the same, still cold, still guarded, but there was a weariness in her eyes. She hesitated for a moment when she saw me, like she wasn't sure if I'd even acknowledge her. But I did. I walked up to her and said, "Hi." For a second, she didn't speak. She just watched me. "I've been thinking about you," she said quietly, after a beat. "I know I wasn't there for you when you needed me. And I'm sorry. I should have been a better friend." I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I just felt tired. Tired of holding on to something that had already crumbled. "Mia," I said, my voice steady. "You can't be sorry for something you weren't willing to change. I don't need you to fix anything. I don't need anything from you anymore. And I think, maybe, that's okay." She seemed to understand. She nodded, her expression softening, though I could see the regret in her eyes. But I couldn't hold on to that regret anymore. I had to let it go. "I'm okay, Mia," I said. "I'm okay now." She stood there for a moment longer, like she was waiting for me to say more. But I didn't. I didn't need to. I had said everything I needed to say. I had come to terms with my life, without David, without Mia. "I hope you find peace," I added. "I really do." With that, I turned and walked away. There was no more bitterness. No more anger. Just a quiet sense of resolution. I didn't know what the future held for me, but I knew I was ready to face it. I was ready to build something new, something that wasn't haunted by the past. I had learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how much pain I had endured, I could survive. And I would.